Evan Chen had expected many things when he accepted the diplomatic posting to Vulpinia 7. He'd expected the rust-colored skies, the twin moons that hung like copper coins in the atmosphere, and even the distinctive vulpine features of the planet's inhabitants. What he hadn't expected was to become the center of a genetic bidding war between two of the colony's most prominent residents. The Vulpinians were a curious species, bipedal, elegant, with fox-like ears that swiveled to catch every sound and tails that betrayed their emotions no matter how stoic their faces remained. They had welcomed humanity's presence in their sector with cautious optimism, seeking allies in a galaxy that often dismissed smaller civilizations. Evan had been chosen for his diplomatic skills, his xenobiology background, and his seemingly unremarkable human genetics. That last part, as it turned out, was a catastrophic underestimation. "Mr. Chen, my mother is being unreasonable," Hannah declared, her russet ears pinned back in frustration as she cornered him outside the atmospheric processing station. At 23 standard years, she was considered young by Vulpinian standards, but her amber eyes held a determination that made Evan distinctly uncomfortable. Hannah had been his guide since his arrival 6 months ago, patient, knowledgeable, and increasingly insistent about what she called genetic compatibility protocols. Her tail, thick and luxurious with autumn-colored fur, lashed behind her like an agitated cat's. "Hannah, we've discussed this," Evan said carefully, clutching his datapad like a shield. "The diplomatic corps has very specific guidelines about cross-species genetic exchange." "Yes, I've read the literature," she interrupted, stepping closer. "But you don't understand what's at stake. Our population has been declining for 3 generations. We need genetic diversity, and human DNA is remarkably compatible with our own. Your genome specifically." She paused, her nose twitching as she caught his scent. "You carry recessive traits that could strengthen our entire colony." This wasn't the first time Evan had heard this argument. What made it complicated was that Hannah was absolutely correct. His preliminary medical scans, conducted as standard protocol upon arrival, had revealed something unexpected. His genetic code contained several markers that made him unusually compatible with Vulpinian biology. Some quirk of his ancestry, perhaps that great-grandmother from the Ganymede colony, or his grandfather's exposure to mutagenic radiation during the Mars terraforming, had made him a genetic goldmine for a species desperate to avoid inbreeding. The ethical implications kept him awake at night. The personal implications were about to get much worse. "Hannah, darling, are you harassing our guest again?" The voice came from behind him, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. Evan turned to find Magistrate Lyra approaching, Hannah's mother and the colony's senior administrator. Where Hannah's features held youthful sharpness, Lyra's had matured into something more refined. Her silver-streaked fur spoke of age and wisdom, and her tail moved with calculated grace. "Mother, I was here first," Hannah said, her voice taking on a growl that Evan had learned meant she was seriously annoyed. "First is irrelevant, dear. I'm the one with the authority to actually approve genetic contracts." Lyra smiled, showing just a hint of her fangs. "Mr. Chen, I hope my daughter hasn't been too forward. She forgets that diplomacy requires finesse." Evan found himself trapped between 2 Vulpinians, each radiating determination and something else he didn't want to examine too closely. "Magistrate Hannah, I really think we should discuss this with the entire Colonial Council present. This isn't a decision I can make, can't, or won't." Lyra moved closer, her ears tilted forward attentively. "Evan, may I call you Evan? You must understand our situation. We're not some primitive species seeking to collect exotic genes like trophies. We're facing extinction. Every geneticist we've consulted says the same thing. We need outside genetic material, and we need it within the next 2 generations. You're not just compatible. You're perfect. And I," Hannah interjected, pushing past her mother with surprising boldness, "am of optimal breeding age. Mother may have experience, but I can offer—" "Hannah," Lyra's ears flattened completely, a sign of severe displeasure. "I can offer a longer timeline for genetic integration," Hannah finished defiantly. "And frankly, Evan and I have actually spent time together. We have rapport." Evan's mind raced. This was spiraling into territory that no diplomatic training had prepared him for. The human embassy had protocols for trade negotiations, military alliances, even first contact scenarios. But what to do when an entire alien species views you as their genetic savior and a mother-daughter pair are actively competing for your DNA wasn't in any manual he'd read. Both of you. Please, he said, raising his hands. I understand the crisis your people face. I do, but I'm not some prize to be claimed. If, and this is a massive if, I were to consider contributing to Vulpinian genetic preservation, it would have to be done properly. Through official channels, with full consent and understanding from all parties, including Earth government. Earth government? Lyra's laugh was sharp. Evan, your Earth government left you here with minimal support and barely adequate supplies. They don't care about Vulpinia 7, they barely remember we exist. She wasn't wrong. The frontier colonies always got the short end of resource allocation. Evan had been on Vulpinia 7 long enough to see how Earth's promises of support had evaporated into bureaucratic delays and budget cuts. That doesn't mean I can just, he started. Just what? Help save a dying civilization? Hannah's voice cracked slightly, her bravado slipping. Evan, I'm not just some desperate girl throwing herself at you. I've studied human culture, your literature, your concepts of heroism. Isn't this what your species prides itself on? Stepping up when others need help? The HFY stories Evan had grown up with suddenly felt very different when he was living one. Humanity's reputation across the stars had been built on moments like this, humans doing what needed to be done, regardless of personal cost. But those stories never mentioned the complicated emotions, the ethical quagmires, or the fact that sometimes being humanity's representative meant making impossible choices. I need time, Evan said finally. Both of you, please. Give me time to think, to consult with my superiors, to understand all the implications. This isn't just about genetics or survival. It's about consent, about agency, about doing this the right way. Lyra and Hannah exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between mother and daughter. Finally, Lyra nodded. 1 week, she said. But Evan, understand this, you're not just one human anymore. You're hope, and hope is a dangerous thing to withhold from the desperate. As they left him standing alone under the copper moons, Evan realized that his story on Vulpinia 7 was just beginning. And like all the best HFY tales, it would require him to figure out what it truly meant to be human, and whether that humanity was defined by biology or by the choices one made when everything was on the line.